Dr. Amanda Thompson slouched in her anti-gravity chair, staring at the holographic display where her latest report hung incomplete. 3 years of studying human integration into the galactic community, and she still couldn't make sense of them. The Galactic Anthropological Society demanded explanations she couldn't provide. Recording supplemental observation log. Date standard 2840-7-3, she muttered, rubbing her temples. Humans continue to defy conventional behavioral patterns in ways that... She paused, searching for a diplomatic term. Challenge our understanding of sapient logic. A crash from the observation deck interrupted her thoughts. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she watched as Kelly Martinez, her human research partner, taught a group of Centaurian delegates how to play floor is lava using floating cargo containers as platforms. Case in point, Amanda continued, trying to maintain her professional tone. Human Recreation Study 247. Despite having access to advanced entertainment systems, humans consistently invent games that place them in simulated danger. Current example, Martinez, K., demonstrating what she calls parkour to diplomatic officials. A Centaurian ambassador, their crystalline form gleaming under the station lights, executed a perfect backflip between containers. The others chittered in excitement, their natural bioluminescence flashing in patterns that Amanda's translator rendered as most entertaining death simulation. Correction, she added to her notes. They're not simulating danger anymore. They've somehow turned it into an officially sanctioned diplomatic exercise. The door chimed, and Kelly bounced in, her dark hair wild from the artificial gravity fluctuations. Amanda, you won't believe what just happened. The Centaurians want to establish an official cultural exchange program based on extreme sports. Amanda's facial tentacles twitched, a habit she'd picked up during her years among humans. Kelly, please tell me you didn't. Oh, come on. This is huge. Kelly's enthusiasm was infectious, even to Amanda's species. They've already proposed combining their crystalline growth abilities with human parkour techniques. We're calling it crystal running. Amanda added another note. Humans exhibit an unprecedented ability to turn any activity, no matter how dangerous, into a social bonding experience. More concerning, other species are beginning to emulate this behavior. And that's not even the best part, Kelly continued, pulling up her own holographic display. Remember that deep space mining vessel we thought was derelict? Turns out some human explorers found it last week. Instead of salvaging it, they turned it into what they're calling a space mosh pit. Something about the radiation harmonics creating the perfect beat. Amanda's tentacles went completely rigid. They did what? Oh yeah, they've got 3 different bands playing there now. The Centaurians are actually really into heavy metal, something about the frequencies resonating with their crystal matrices. Who knew? Adding to her report, Amanda typed, humans demonstrate an alarming tendency to repurpose potentially hazardous situations and locations into recreational facilities. More alarming, they're good at it. Update on the Voidwalker situation too, Kelly added, scrolling through her notes. Remember how everyone said humans couldn't possibly survive recreational spacewalking without ships? Well, some engineers from Texas just invented what they're calling space surfing. They're using modified force fields to ride solar wind currents. The Galactic Sports Federation is already talking about making it an official competition sport. Amanda stared at her partner, then at her report, then back at her partner. Finally, she added one last note. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of human behavior is not their apparent insanity, but their consistent ability to make that insanity work. While other species see boundaries, humans see suggestions. While we see dangers, they see opportunities. Most troubling of all, they're teaching the rest of us to see the galaxy the same way. Through the window, a Centaurian ambassador executed a perfect double backflip between containers, their crystal form streaming rainbow patterns of pure joy. Conclusion. Amanda recorded, watching Kelly high-five the ambassador's equivalent appendage. Humans aren't merely adapting to galactic society, they're adapting galactic society to them. And somehow, against all logic and probability, they're making the galaxy a more interesting place in the process. May the cosmic forces help us all. She closed her report just as Kelly started teaching the ambassadors about something called crowd surfing. Sometimes, Amanda reflected, the only sane response to human insanity was to embrace it. She found herself smiling as she added a final personal note. And may we never become too logical to enjoy it. James Cooper had never imagined his diplomatic career would end because of a solo cup and a ping-pong ball, but as he watched the Zrylaxian High Council members arranging red cups in perfect geometric patterns, he realized some mistakes were worth making. Explain the ritual significance again, Ambassador Cooper requested High Counselor Vex, their bioluminescent markings pulsing with curiosity. The normally stoic alien was carefully measuring the distance between cups with a quantum precision tool. Well, James scratched his head. It's less of a ritual and more of a team-building exercise. He watched as another counselor used advanced gravitational manipulation to ensure each cup contained exactly the same amount of their ceremonial nectar. The incident had started 3 hours earlier during what should have been a routine treaty negotiation. James, nervous and missing his college days, had been absent-mindedly playing with a ping-pong ball he kept in his pocket for stress relief. The Zrylaxians, with their cultural fascination for spherical objects, had immediately noticed. Your throwing accuracy is approximately 98.7% consistent, observed Junior Counselor Zix, who had been meticulously recording James's practice throws. This must be the result of intensive military training. Ah, no, James had replied. Just lots of practice at frat parties. Now he watched as the Zrylaxian Science Division projected complex trajectory calculations into the air, mapping optimal throwing arcs. They had even developed a quantum uncertainty targeting system to account for what they called the human element of chaos. Ambassador called Senior Researcher Mex, their crystalline appendages clicking with excitement. We've synthesized what you call beer using local compounds. However, we took the liberty of improving its molecular structure. This version should enhance neural plasticity and temporal perception. James picked up one of the cups, sniffing cautiously. You made smart beer. Indeed. We believe it will optimize performance in this beer pong competition you've introduced. Though we're still puzzled by the traditional human victory celebration you called a victory dance. Before James could respond, the chamber's doors burst open. Ambassador Chen from the Proxima Coalition stormed in, their feathered crest flaring with indignation. What is the meaning of this? The Zrylaxian High Council canceled our border dispute negotiations for a drinking game. High Counselor Vex's markings shifted to formal patterns. Ah, Ambassador Chen, we were just implementing a new human diplomatic protocol. Would your coalition be interested in settling our territory dispute through this tournament bracket system? Ambassador Cooper suggested. James choked on his smart beer. I didn't exactly. A competition. Chen's crest rippled with interest, despite their apparent outrage. Our neural network analysts have already compiled extensive data on projectile trajectories and fluid dynamics. Of course they have, James muttered, watching his diplomatic career implode in real time. Within hours, the council chamber had been transformed. Holographic scoreboards floated overhead, quantum computers calculated odds, and representatives from 12 different species argued about whether telekinetic abilities constituted an unfair advantage. Ambassador Cooper called out Vex, their markings now showing patterns James recognized as excitement. We require clarification on the regulations regarding psychic manipulation of the ball's quantum state. James watched as a Proximan representative used their species' natural magnetic fields to curve a shot in seeming defiance of physics. New rule. No quantum tunneling the ball through the cups, and no telepathically drinking the beer. To his surprise, both delegations accepted these restrictions with good humor. The game had somehow accomplished what months of formal negotiations couldn't, getting everyone to agree on something. You know, Chen sidled up to James, their crest now showing amused patterns. This is either the stupidest or most brilliant diplomatic innovation I've seen in my 300 cycles. James shrugged, watching as a Drylaxian elder celebrated a successful shot within surprisingly accurate robot dance. Sometimes the stupidest things work the best. We call that the human factor. As the night progressed, border disputes were settled through best-of-3 matches. Trade agreements were sketched out on napkins, and at least 2 species developed new appendages specifically for better ball control. Final observation. James recorded in his official diplomatic log, trying to keep his voice professional despite the victory chants echoing through the chamber. Sometimes the best way to achieve peace isn't through careful negotiation or serious diplomacy. Sometimes you just need to give different species a chance to be silly together. And maybe, just maybe, that's humanity's real gift to the galaxy, teaching everyone else how to have fun. Behind him, the newly formed Intergalactic Beer Pong Federation was already planning their first tournament. James smiled. Some diplomatic incidents, it turned out, were worth the paperwork. Mike Davidson wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the failing reactor core of Deep Space Station Beta. The pulsing red warning lights reflected off his worn maintenance uniform, a stark contrast to the pristine white walls of the engineering deck. "Let me get this straight," he drawled, squinting at the holographic readouts. "You're telling me this fancy antimatter reactor is basically throwing a tantrum because its quantum harmonics are out of whack." Chief Engineer Zex 427, their metallic exoskeleton clicking nervously, bobbed in agreement. "Correct. Without proper quantum alignment, the station will lose power in approximately 47 minutes. Emergency evacuation protocols air." "Hold up," Mike raised his hand, a familiar glint in his eye. "This reminds me of something. Y'all ever hear of a '72 Ford pickup?" The assembled alien engineers exchanged confused glances. First Officer Lyra, her bioluminescent patterns showing clear distress, stepped forward. "Maintenance Technician Davidson, this is hardly the time for Earth automotive history." No, hear me out," Mike insisted, already pulling tools from his belt. "Back home, I had this old truck. Thing would shake something fierce when the timing was off. Found out you could fix it by using the vibrations from one cylinder to balance out another." "That is," Zex 427 paused, their processing lights flickering rapidly, "completely irrelevant to our current situation." Mike was already moving, grabbing power conduits and rerouting systems. "See, what if we treat these quantum harmonics like engine cylinders? Instead of fighting the vibrations, we use them." "Absolutely not." Lyra's patterns flashed warning colors. "The safety protocols clearly state." "Ma'am, with all due respect," Mike grinned, pulling out what looked suspiciously like a modified wrench. "Sometimes you gotta kick the engine to make it purr." Before anyone could stop him, Mike had connected 3 power conduits in a way that made the alien engineer's safety sensors scream in protest. The reactor's humming changed pitch, shifting from an angry whine to something almost musical. "Are you insane?" Zex 427's exoskeleton was practically vibrating with alarm. "You've created a feedback loop between the quantum fields. The energy discharge alone could balance out the harmonic distortion." Mike finished, adjusting his makeshift connections, just like tapping the carburetor on that old Ford. Sometimes you gotta let the machine find its own rhythm. To everyone's astonishment, the reactor's warning lights began shifting from red to green. The quantum readouts, previously chaotic, settled into a stable pattern that none of the alien engineers had ever seen before. "This is impossible," Lyra whispered, her patterns showing pure amazement. "You've created a self-stabilizing quantum resonance using primitive Earth mechanical principles." Mike shrugged, pocketing his modified wrench. "Sometimes the old ways work best. My grandpa used to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if it is broke, hit it till it works." But Zex 427's processors were practically smoking. This violates at least 15 safety protocols and several laws of physics. Yeah, Mike grinned, patting the now humming reactor housing. But it works, don't it? Within hours, stations across the galaxy were requesting information about what they were calling the Davidson method. Mike found himself explaining Earth mechanics to bewildered alien engineers, using analogies about lawnmowers and motorcycle engines to describe quantum phenomena. Final maintenance log entry, Mike recorded later, sitting in the station's observation deck with a well-earned beer. Turns out the universe ain't so different from an old truck. Sometimes you gotta stop overthinking and just listen to what the machine's telling you. And maybe, just maybe, all that fancy alien tech could learn a thing or two from good old-fashioned human ingenuity. Below his feet, the reactor hummed contentedly, its quantum harmonics now synced to what the alien engineers had dubbed Davidson's resonance. They still couldn't explain why it worked, but they couldn't argue with the results. Oh, and P.S. Mike added to his log, someone tell the Galactic Engineering Corps that sometimes the best solution ain't in their manual. Sometimes it's in a junkyard in Texas. Outside the station's windows, the stars twinkled steadily, bearing witness to yet another instance of humans solving an impossible problem by simply refusing to acknowledge it was impossible in the first place. Emily Parker stood in the control room of her salvage ship, Lucky Break, holding her battered Gibson guitar and facing a screen full of horrified alien officials. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. Admiral Vex's hologram flickered with barely contained disbelief. Your solution to rescuing the crystalline beings trapped in the gas giant's core is to play music at them. Emily strummed a power chord, making several alien sensors overload. Not just play music, Admiral. We're gonna give them one hell of a show. The situation had started 12 hours earlier, when a research vessel containing crystalline entities from the Harmonious Collective had become trapped in the crushing depths of Neptune 7's atmosphere. Conventional rescue methods had failed, the pressure was too intense for normal ships, and the electromagnetic storms made teleportation impossible. The crystalline beings communicate through vibrations, right? Emily adjusted her guitar's quantum amplifier, a modification she'd made during a particularly boring deep space haul, and they're currently resonating at a frequency it's keeping them alive but trapped. Correct, Dr. Exire, the leading xenobiologist, confirmed. But the pressure is just another form of rhythm, Emily interrupted, plugging her guitar into the ship's main communications array. Lucky Break's hull can handle the pressure for about 10 minutes. That's enough time for one epic solo. Captain Reynolds of the Galactic Rescue Fleet appeared on another screen. Ms. Parker, this is beyond unorthodox. The risk calculations. With all due respect, Captain. Emily checked her guitar's tuning. Sometimes you gotta stop calculating and start rocking. Before anyone could object further, Emily had initiated Lucky Break's descent into the gas giant's atmosphere. The ship groaned under the increasing pressure, but held steady. Beginning transmission, she announced, positioning her fingers on the fretboard. Let's see how these crystal folks like some classic Earth metal. The opening riffs of Stairway to Heaven echoed through the gas giant's atmosphere, amplified and modified by the ship's communications array. At first, nothing happened. Then the readings started changing. This is impossible, Dr. Exire gasped, watching the data streams. The crystalline entities, they're responding to the musical patterns. Their resonance frequencies are shifting. Emily grinned, transitioning smoothly into Metallica's Nothing Else Matters. Music's the universal language, Doc, even in a gas giant. Through the ship's reinforced viewport, they could see the trapped research vessel beginning to pulse with light, its crystalline crew sensing their natural frequencies to Emily's guitar riffs. Hull integrity at 60%. Lucky Break's eye warned. Time for the final, Emily muttered, launching into her own composition, a blend of heavy metal and quantum harmonics she'd written during long solo flights. The crystalline entities began to glow brighter, their combined resonance creating a pattern that matched Emily's music. Slowly, defying the crushing pressure, their vessel began to rise. It's working. Admiral Vex's hologram showed actual emotion for once. The combined resonance is creating a frequency bubble that's counteracting the pressure. Hull integrity at 30%, the AI announced as Emily's fingers flew across the fretboard. Come on, she urged, pouring everything she had into the music. Follow the beat home. In a final crescendo of power chords and quantum harmonics, both vessels broke free of the gas giant's grasp, emerging into safe space just as Lucky Break's hull reached critical stress levels. Later, during the official debrief, Emily sat casually with her guitar while various officials tried to make sense of what had happened. Your actions were reckless, unprecedented, and completely violated rescue protocols, Admiral Vex stated. However, they were also surprisingly effective. The rescued crystalline entities had requested copies of Emily's music, claiming it had shown them new possibilities for their own resonance patterns. There was already talk of establishing a cultural exchange program focused on Earth rock music. Sometimes, Emily replied, strumming a quiet chord, the best solution is the one nobody else would think of. That's kind of humanity's specialty. As she filed her official report, Emily couldn't help but add a personal note. Today proved what I've always believed. There's no problem in this universe that can't be solved with the right soundtrack. And if anyone tells you different, they just haven't found the right song yet. The crystalline entities, as it turned out, went on to form the galaxy's first rock band. Their debut album, Gas Giant Blues, topped the charts in 17 star systems. Ryan Miller sat in his office at Galactic streaming services, watching with growing amusement as his alien colleagues attempted to process the concept of horror movies. The quarterly content review meeting had devolved into barely controlled chaos. Let me clarify. Chief Content Analyst Six's tentacles writhed in confusion. Humans intentionally create these simulations of terror for entertainment. Exactly. Ryan beamed, pulling up a holographic display of classic horror films. And the best part is, we know it's fake, but we pretend it's real to make it more fun. Senior Media Director Lyra's bioluminescent patterns shifted to show deep concern. And the thing, this isn't a historical document about a shape-shifting invasion. Nope, just good old-fashioned Hollywood magic, Ryan chuckled, remembering how the Regelian Security Council had nearly declared war on Earth after watching Independence Day. But why? Demanded Junior Analyst Vex, their crystalline form clouded with confusion. What possible evolutionary advantage could be gained from simulated fear responses? Ryan leaned back in his chair, searching for the right words. Think of it like emotional exercise. Like how you folks have those quantum meditation chambers, except we get our catharsis from watching teenagers make bad decisions in haunted houses. The meeting room erupted in multiple alien languages as various species tried to process this information. The holographic displays now showed clips from Alien, causing several xenobiologists to update their threat assessment protocols. And this reality television? Lyra inquired, her patterns showing a mix of horror and fascination. These humans voluntarily isolate themselves and engage in social combat for public entertainment. Well, when you put it that way, Ryan started, but was interrupted by an urgent message from the Galactic Broadcasting Authority. Mr. Miller, the stern face of Commissioner Exwire filled the main screen. We need to discuss the recent incident involving the Kardashian archives. Ryan winced. He'd forgotten about that. Look, I can explain. 3 star systems are convinced Earth is ruled by a dynasty of drama-prone monarchs. The Zeta Reticuli have already sent diplomatic envoys requesting an audience with Queen Kim. To be fair, Ryan offered, that's not entirely inaccurate. The commissioner's expression remained stern. And then there's the matter of this Gordon Ramsay person. The Culinary Federation is in an uproar. They believe he's some kind of human berserker who gains power through food-related combat. Actually, Ryan brightened. That's given me an idea for a new show. Picture this. Intergalactic kitchen nightmares. We send Gordon to failing restaurants across the galaxy. Absolutely not. Multiple voices chorused. But it was too late. The alien representatives were already showing interest, their various biological indicators betraying their curiosity. Witty critiques Srilaxian fusion cuisine. Asked Vex, trying to sound casual. Could we include psychic taste testing challenges? Lyra's patterns pulsed with excitement. Ryan grinned, pulling up a new document. See, this is why humans are great at entertainment. We don't just think outside the box. We stuff the box full of explosives, film it in slow motion, and call it primetime content. As the meeting devolved into enthusiastic planning for what would become the galaxy's most controversial cooking show, Ryan added a note to his daily log. Humanity's greatest export might not be our technology or our science, but our ability to turn anything, even our own fears and failures, into entertainment. The galaxy may not understand us, but they sure can't stop watching. Later that day, as Ryan approved the release of the Great British Bake Off to the Andromeda Galaxy, with appropriate warnings about the cultural significance of soggy bottoms, he received a message from the Galactic Cultural Exchange Office. While we remain concerned about the psychological implications of human entertainment, we cannot deny its effectiveness in promoting interspecies understanding. Also, please explain why thousands of alien vessels are gathering at Earth's coordinates on October 31st, something called Halloween Experience. Ryan just smiled and started drafting a memo explaining the concept of trick-or-treating to the galactic community. Sometimes the best way to unite the galaxy was through shared confusion about human pastimes. Lieutenant Diana Foster stood at the negotiation table aboard the Galactic Peace Station, staring down Admiral Kirks of the Proxima Warfleet. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife, or in this case, a bottle of death's last regret hot sauce. You're suggesting, Admiral Kirks's translucent scales rippled with disbelief, that we settle this territorial dispute through the ritual consumption of caustic substances. Diana placed the bottle on the table with a definitive thunk. Unless you're scared of a little Earth-style competition. The dispute over the Nebula 9 mining rights had been dragging on for months. Free species were on the brink of war, and traditional diplomacy had failed spectacularly. That's when Diana remembered the ancient human art of solving problems through increasingly poor dietary choices. The rules are simple, she explained, pulling out shot glasses. Each round gets hotter. Last one standing wins the mining rights. No genetic modifications, no neutralizing agents, and absolutely no quantum taste bud manipulation. Admiral Kirks's secondary eyes narrowed. And what prevents us from simply tolerating the pain? Diana grinned. That's the beauty of it. You have to maintain enough composure to recite your species' traditional poetry after each shot. The Srilaxian ambassador, Vex, who had been quietly observing, suddenly perked up. Poetry and pain. This is intriguingly barbaric. Within hours, the challenge had turned into an impromptu galactic event. Representatives from 12 species gathered to watch as Diana set up what she called the Gauntlet of Flavor. Round 1, she announced, holding up a bottle. Classic Earth jalapeno. A gentle warm-up. Admiral Kirk scoffed, their scales shimmering with confidence. Then they took the shot, their primary eyes widened dramatically. The stars burn, they gasped, before launching into what the translator identified as an epic poem about space battles. It came out more like a nursery rhyme. By round 3, using something Diana called ghost pepper extract, the Srilaxian ambassador's crystalline form had developed entirely new color patterns, and Admiral Kirks was reciting love poems instead of war epics. This is fascinating, commented Dr. Xr, the xenobiologist monitoring the event. The capsaicin is creating unique neurological responses across different species. Also, Admiral Kirks appears to be experiencing what humans call the hiccups. The final round arrived. Diana pulled out a tiny vial labeled Supernova Sunrise. Handle with extreme caution. Last chance to back out, she offered, noting how Admiral Xerxes' scales had turned an interesting shade of purple. We, the Admiral hiccuped, we do not retreat. What followed would be recorded in multiple galactic histories as the Great Spice Accord. Admiral Xerxes' attempt at their species' victory anthem came out as a surprisingly catchy pop song. The Zrylaxian ambassador's crystalline form briefly achieved fusion, and 3 trade agreements were signed simply because nobody could focus enough to argue about the details. Conclusion of diplomatic operation, Diana recorded later, nursing a glass of milk. Traditional Earth-style hot sauce diplomacy has proven effectively. Interesting. Side effects included temporary peace treaties, 2 new forms of music, and what appears to be the galaxy's first interspecies chili cook-off competition. The Nebula 9 mining rights were eventually divided equally, primarily because all parties involved were too focused on planning the first annual Galactic Hot Sauce Festival. Admiral Xerxes, still occasionally hiccuping, had become an unlikely advocate for Earth cuisine. There's something profound about shared suffering, they admitted during the official treaty signing. Also, I can taste colors now. Diana's hot sauce diplomacy became required study at the Galactic Diplomatic Academy. Her methods were described as alarmingly effective and possibly psychotic, which she considered high praise. As she filed her final report, Diana couldn't help adding a personal note. Sometimes the best way to achieve peace isn't through careful negotiation or shows of force. Sometimes you just need to remind everyone that beneath our different exteriors, we're all equally capable of making questionable decisions in the name of pride. And maybe, just maybe, that's what brings the galaxy together. Our shared ability to be absolutely ridiculous when challenged. The Galactic Hot Sauce Championship became an annual event, though several sectors had to be evacuated during the finals. As Diana liked to say, peace through pain, unity through poor choices, and friendship through fire. Dr. Jack Williams stood before the Galactic Science Council, his pizza box covered in equations, trying to explain why relocating a planet wasn't completely insane. The fact that he was eating a slice while presenting didn't help his credibility. Look, he said, pointing to a grease-stained calculation with his half-eaten pizza, it's actually pretty simple. We just need to create a synchronized network of artificial gravitational wells, like a cosmic game of pool. High Scientist Vex's crystalline form flickered with what could only be described as academic horror. You propose to move planet Exodus by playing billiards with gravity. Exactly. Jack grinned, drawing another diagram next to what appeared to be a pepperoni stain. See, the approaching quantum storm will hit in exactly 47 days. Traditional evacuation would take months, so instead of moving the people, you want to move their entire planet, finished senior physicist Lyra, her bioluminescent patterns showing a mixture of disbelief and fascination, using technology that doesn't exist. Jack wiped his hands on his lab coat, leaving slight tomato sauce marks. Oh, the tech exists. We just need to repurpose about 30 deep space mining lasers, 16 quantum stabilizers, and maybe borrow that experimental gravity drive the Proxima fleet's been working on. The council chamber erupted in multiple languages, most of them expressing variations of impossible and completely insane. The energy requirements alone would be, started Chief Engineer Exor. Already solved that, Jack interrupted, flipping the pizza box over to reveal more equations. We're going to use the quantum storm's own energy against it. Like surfing a wave, but with an entire planet. And you calculated all this. Vex gestured at the greasy makeshift whiteboard during your lunch break. Well, yeah. Some of my best ideas come with extra cheese. Jack grabbed another slice. Plus, the cheese pattern kind of helped me visualize the gravitational fields. Before the council could object further, the quantum storm detection systems blared an update. The storm had accelerated. They now had only 36 days. Well, Jack said through a mouthful of pizza, guess we better get started. What followed was either the most brilliant or most reckless scientific endeavor in galactic history. Jack's team, dubbed the Pizza Box Think Tank, worked around the clock, converting mining equipment into gravity manipulators and reprogramming quantum stabilizers. Status update. Jack recorded on day 15, surrounded by empty coffee cups and pizza boxes. Good news, we've successfully created the first artificial gravity well. Bad news, we accidentally made Tuesday quantum unstable. It now simultaneously exists and doesn't exist until someone observes it directly. The Proxima fleet, surprisingly, had agreed to provide their experimental gravity drive after Jack explained the plan using a salt shaker and some breadsticks. The beautiful part, he told the increasingly bewildered council, is that we're not actually breaking any laws of physics. We're just bending them until they cry uncle. On day 35, with the quantum storm looming like a cosmic guillotine, they initiated Operation Cosmic Shuffle, beginning gravitational synchronization. Jack announced, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. Everyone remember, if something starts existing in two places at once, that's probably fine. If it exists in no places at once, that's less fine. The network of repurposed mining lasers fired up, creating a web of gravitational forces that made several physicists faint from theoretical shock. Planet Exodus shuddered, then began to move. It's working. Lyra's patterns flashed with excitement. The planet is actually dancing through space. More like cosmic mini-golf. Jack corrected, making minute adjustments, with a side of quantum physics and possibly some time dilation. Against all probability and several fundamental constants, Planet Exodus slipped safely out of the quantum storm's path with hours to spare. The population, who had been told they were experiencing scheduled seasonal adjustments, barely noticed anything beyond some interesting auroras and the fact that Tuesday now required active observation to exist. During the celebration, High Scientist Vex approached Jack, who was already sketching new equations on a napkin. Your methods are unorthodox, possibly dangerous, and definitely violate several laws of physics, they stated. However, they worked. How do humans consistently manage this? Jack shrugged, reaching for another slice of pizza. Sometimes the best solutions are the ones that sound crazy enough to work. Also, never underestimate the power of pizza-induced inspiration. His final report to the council consisted of a single line. Turns out you can play pool with planets. You just need the right angle and enough cheese to fuel the calculations. Veteran Senate diplomat Thomas Anderson stood before the Galactic Council emergency session, his presentation titled, "Why Letting Humans Solve Problems is Like Giving Toddlers Antimatter, a 5-year analysis." Distinguished members of the council, he began, adjusting his slightly wrinkled diplomatic uniform. I'm here to explain why humanity's apparent insanity might be the best thing that's happened to the galaxy. The chamber's holographic displays showed a montage of recent human innovations: Emily Parker's guitar-powered rescue mission, Mike Davidson's truck-inspired reactor fix, and Dr. Jack Williams' pizza box planetary physics. First, Thomas continued, let's address the quantum elephant in the room. Yes, we turned your ancient war chamber into an intergalactic beer pong arena. And yes, that somehow led to lasting peace in 3 sectors. High Counselor Vex's crystalline form shimmered with what had become known as the human headache pattern. We've noticed a concerning trend in human problem-solving methodologies. You mean how we keep succeeding by doing things that shouldn't work? Thomas grinned. That's actually the point of my presentation. He pulled up new footage. Diana Foster's Hot Sauce Diplomacy Summit, complete with Admiral Xerxes' surprisingly melodic hiccup poetry. C. Other species approach problems like master craftsmen, with precision, planning, and proper tools. Humans? We're more like kids with a box of random parts and too much creativity for our own good. But the risks, started Senior Administrator Lyra, her patterns showing concern, are exactly why it works, Thomas interrupted. We don't see risks the same way. Where you see danger, we see, let's call it spicy opportunities. The display shifted to Ryan Miller's latest entertainment venture, Extreme Xenobaking, where contestants tried to create Earth desserts under various alien atmospheric conditions. Take this show, Thomas gestured. Most species would see the dangers of baking in methane atmospheres. We saw a chance to make really crispy cookies and possibly invent new forms of matter. The council chamber buzzed with multiple species versions of nervous laughter. They'd all seen the Pluto pastry incident footage. But here's the real kicker, Thomas continued, pulling up statistical analyses. Since humanity joined the galactic community, successful crisis resolution has increased by 300%. Yes, our methods are chaotic. Yes, we sometimes temporarily break physics. And yes, we did teach the Zrylaxians to play air guitar. He paused for effect. But we get results. Why? Because we haven't learned what's impossible yet. And by the time someone tries to tell us, we've already done it. The final display showed a compilation of human victories. James Cooper's accidental peace treaty through party games, Amanda Thompson's increasingly bewildered research logs, and the now famous Centaurian Crystal Running Championships. In conclusion, Thomas straightened his tie. Humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy isn't our technology, our science, or even our music. Though I have to say, the Crystalline Entity's latest album is pretty good. It's our ability to look at the impossible and say, "Hold my beer." The council chamber remained silent for a long moment. Finally, High Counselor Vex spoke. "Your assessment is troublingly accurate. But how do we proceed? How does one effectively govern a species that treats the laws of physics as mere suggestions?" Thomas smiled. "That's the beauty of it. You don't. You let us keep doing what we do best, finding creative solutions to impossible problems. Sometimes those solutions involve heavy metal concerts in gas giants. Sometimes they involve quantum-enhanced hot sauce. But they work." He added, "Besides, I think we've made the galaxy a more interesting place. When was the last time anyone here was bored?" The council couldn't argue with that. Between the Intergalactic Beer Pong Federation, the Extreme Xenobaking Channel, and Tuesday's new quantum uncertain status, the galaxy had become significantly more entertaining. Final recommendation, Thomas concluded, don't try to understand humans. Don't try to predict us. Just point us at problems and stand back. Preferably way back, especially if we start reaching for pizza boxes or guitars. As the council session ended, Thomas added one last note to his report. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our intelligence, our technology, or even our creativity. It's our ability to be just crazy enough to try things that shouldn't work, combined with the stubborn determination to keep trying until they do. We're not just thinking outside the box. We're using the box as a surfboard to ride quantum waves while playing rock music. And somehow, against all logic and probability, the galaxy is better for it. The Galactic Council officially classified humans as productively unpredictable. It was, perhaps, the most accurate description yet.